Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Overtime Live, sponsored by F9 Analytics. We are here with the panel 4, part in the disruption technologies connecting us to the buildings of the future. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. We're going to start it by kicking it off to my left. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Travis Barrington. I'm the publisher and editorial director for High Rise Facilities. We publish a magazine, website, weekly emails that target building owners and managers for properties 12 stories or taller.
Hi everyone, my name is Arie Barendrecht. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WiredScore. We're the first and only certification platform for internet connectivity in office buildings. So we help commercial owners understand their telecommunications infrastructure and then market that to the tenant and brokerage community to attract tenants and drive leasing based on telecom offerings.
John?
Hello, my name is John Cona. I'm CEO and founder of F9 Analytics. We deliver financial solutions to companies so they can make better decisions in the lease analysis arena.
Great, and I'm Keith Perske. I'm the lead for Workplace Innovation Consulting Practice at Colliers International. We help occupiers make their workplaces competitive.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. I think that this is personally one of my favorite subjects, is talking about buildings and the technologies that are going into them, and also, you know, some of the different technologies and platforms that brokers, owners are using to manage their space. So let's talk about some of the technologies that are being introduced to these buildings from a software or a hardware side. Why don't we start with you, Travis, from what you've seen?
Yeah, some of the things that our panelists were talking about was monitoring buildings and the way that they are used to find ways to save money and to optimize building performance. I think that was kind of a key theme that we were talking about. I think these guys can touch on that a little bit more. It seemed to kind of dominate half the discussion. I think it's an important concept.
Sure, that's where we are now. Let's have somebody jump right in and let's kind of let everybody know.
Keith, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, well, we were talking about a couple things earlier. One of them is having technology that helps you understand how your space is being used, so that you can make real-time decisions about occupancy and about how you deploy space. I think another thing, though, is really, and it was brought up a couple times, is really being able to integrate data from a lot of different systems so that you're able to have intelligence from your accounting system, your building systems, your lease management system, all those things pulled together in a single platform so you're able to make decisions. I think that's a really important piece, too.
Yeah, and John, let's kick to that, because I think, we talked about the connections of data, and I think F9 is talking that you already have an API that you've developed, correct?
Right. So, I mean, on Keith's point, which I think is very important with the environments. I mean, one thing I just want to point out is, like, and I talked about this with Keith, is that people focus on load factor, but they don't realize is that those are the amenities, those are the environments you're paying for, and we run into this all the time, and we think they need to move away from it. From our perspective now, from financial optimization, we're just trying to kind of bridge the gap between asset management and leasing so they can make true informed financial decisions.
Right. And Arie, you can comment on that, but then why don't you comment on that, and then I want a follow-up question with you.
Yeah, I guess one of the things, just to kind of bring it all together, as Keith was saying, we talked a lot about systems to enable building owners and managers to optimize their space and optimize the building as a environment in terms of energy and security and things like that. My world is all about connectivity and the importance of having wireline, fiber, and cellular connectivity in the building. And there's actually a ton of overlap there that I didn't mention earlier. If you think about systems where maybe a camera in a building, right, is monitoring a cooling system and there's a leak. That camera actually, if it's hooked up, if it's IP backed, right, hooked up, connected by the internet, can identify that there's a leak, and then
fire, smoke,
anything, right, and communicate that back to the building owner. So that data and those systems are so important that they can talk to each other. But the other piece of that is they have to be connected by fiber, right? You have to have an IP backed system. So that's one of the technologies that you need to really support the entire thing and make this building a big melting pot for data that we can make decisions based on.
Absolutely. Now, and also, I wanted to follow it up with, you're doing it. You're dealing a lot with these buildings. You're talking to the building owners. You're working with them. What are the obstacles in getting into the buildings from your experience, and also from the owner management side? Are you seeing? Are they open to it? Are we seeing a more faster adoption of these things?
Sure. So, interestingly, buildings have been a major gatekeeper when it comes to connectivity and getting like fiber and fast carriers into buildings. A lot of people blame the Verizons and the AT&Ts of the world for not, building out their network infrastructure into every building. But the landlord or building manager has the final say.
Right.
Like they decide what equipment's coming in the conduit or what's being put in their basements or in their risers. And for a long time, they kind of didn't prioritize the need to have a lot of carriers to choose from or fiber to every floor. But now tenants are demanding it. Like tenants are demanding that they have Wi-Fi in the common areas or DAS systems to help their cell phones work better. So now you're starting to see more adoption over the last 2 and 3 years, especially from the more progressive landlords who get it and want to make sure their buildings are well connected. And those are the types of landlords we work with. But there's a lot of buildings that don't see it as an important thing.
Right.
So it's important for tenants to know which buildings are well connected and which ones aren't.
Sure. So, we're talking about connectivity, the Internet of Things, as the phrase that's thrown out there publicly. I want to talk about, let's go outside the box. Let's talk about companies like Tesla and these new electric cars, right? Or even driverless cars that if you're not going to own it, it's going to have to still park somewhere potentially. So building owners now are working with companies like Tesla and are starting to think, I need to have a charging station, where I never even thought of that. So can we talk about some of those things like a Tesla, things like that, and how is that being adopted by the building owners in your experience?
I think maybe Keith is in a position to talk about that a little bit. Is that driven at all by workplace, by tenants?
I think that's a fantastic example of, as technology evolves, there's different demands on the landlord and on the space. I think about, I can't speak to the Tesla one as much as I can speak to the inside of the space, really, about, people bring technology to the space that's better than what is supplied by their company. So how do we provide for that kind of use, the BYOD thing, bring your own device kind of thing? It's been around for a while, but actually I think it's now finally hit the tipping point where IT groups are realizing that that's a really important thing. People are bringing to there's this whole app-based idea. So the expectations of workers with technology is very different than it was just 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
And so we have to, as providers of workplace, have experiences for the interaction with their devices that are as good as their experiences at home. That it's app-based, that it's graphic, that it is simple. And we're getting there, and I think that's really great. I think that the IT department in big corps, their role is changing a lot. It's really about security and acceptance of these different platforms and providing applications that are easy to work with. And so it's not quite the Tesla example, but I think it's the idea that the external demands of your employees are very different and a lot more sophisticated and a lot stronger, to the point where your top talent's going to go, I'm going there and not there, simply based on the way the technology is working.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that again ties back into exactly what you do, Arie, which is the the connectivity of the building, because you can have all the devices being brought in, and if they can't connect to the internet in the space because the building doesn't have proper internet speed, you lose it, right? So I think it's a very interesting mix, and it's a great time to be doing these things.
Yeah, I think what's a little scary is that where the younger, more TAMI tenants are going is a lot of these neighborhoods like Midtown South or Brooklyn here, right, where there's older buildings, Class B buildings, and you don't have owners maybe that are employing a Keith or people who are focusing on the new technologies and how the buildings can adapt to them. So where like some of our hippest, most cutting edge companies are going, there's a collision course a bit with those smaller owners who own cool buildings in really, really cool neighborhoods, but they're really behind when it comes to technology.
Sure.
And that's an interesting clash.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great pivot into you, John, because as the owners are using brokers to lease properties or property managers on site, they're using new tools like F9 Analytics to manage this, and if they can't operate the tools to make the money, I think you're going to see the buildings get high-speed internet a lot faster. faster. So talk about that and that type of.
Yeah, I mean that's something we try to address because, as I've said before numerous times, it's like if you're going to apply finance at the property level, why aren't you doing it in the most sophisticated way at the leasing level? Now, granted, you have asset management teams and analysts on board, but it's still a disparate process using Excel. Old, archaic Excel models have been passed down, and someone's trying to use it. We kind of need to get rid of that process, and I think the technology out there, all of us being here, I mean that's what we're promoting. Keith, focus on the environments is key. And we need to spend a little bit of time, I know, educating people, but they also need to spend a little bit of time educating themselves, or we can't help them. And the early adopters are going to win. I mean, that's just how it's going to be.
Right, totally agree. Keith, let's go back to you. Let's talk about, let's go back inside the building. What are some of the technology demands that are being made on building owners? Besides the internet, which I think is the most obvious because everyone's connected. You have to be, whether it's physically connected or through a device. But what are some other technology things, whether putting it in public spaces in the building or even workers bringing it into their space?
Well, I think when you think about the workplace as really a place to curate experiences, right, and enable workers to be productive and engaged, then you start to think about the technology in a different way. Now the technology is about, lots of visuals, lots of screens, lots of teleconferencing types of things, but lots of data that's delivered visually to you. So in common spaces, we're going to see a lot more of that, I think. So I think building owners have to make sure that's available.
And let me stop. Do you think that those, not just that we'll see that there, but they'll be interactive?
Oh, I think so, absolutely.
Right.
And it'll be interactive on multiple things. There'll be a news feed, and next thing you know, there'll be a Twitter feed, and next thing you know, there'll be an internal Yammer feed. It'll be, these screens will be multi-dimensional and use lots of, and sometimes they'll just be interactive teleconference things. But that's one example, I think.
Right.
That the other so it's really about curating that experience, and as people move through the space, they become more connected to the brand, to the company they're working for. Because as workers, we have choices to work anywhere we want to, right? We're technically savvy, we can do that. What we want to do with our workplaces is make them attractors, so that when they come to the workplace, they connect with the company and with each other and find meaning in that, find purpose in that. And in that way, they're sticky, they stay longer, we keep our best talent, we attract good talent, and they're very productive because people who feel engaged and connected to the brand of the company are much more productive. So to the extent that technology through screens and data work that Ian's doing through those things, that makes that experience of being an employee in a building sticky and valuable.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to, before we get off that, I wanted to talk about Concierge Services, kind of following up with on those screens, right? So we have the screens, they're not going to be displayed necessarily, they could be interactive. Are we going to see a lot more, like, especially in New York, you see it in residential buildings. I want to come outside my office and get my dry cleaning done. I want to go to the public space and order that right there. I want to order an Uber, not from my phone, but from the TV screen that's, the interactive screen on my floor. Are we seeing that? Is that being adopted? Is that coming into play?
Who are you asking? In my experience, it kind of goes back to that. What's really exciting about this event is that there's so many interesting technologies, not even that, just ways to use existing technologies,
right, I agree.
Ways to package data, to make it more useful, to visualize it. So I think really what's going to happen in the short term is that a lot of these are going to be shaken out. It's going to be interesting to see who the winners are, because there's so much out there that I think we're at a point where we're going to see who adopts the technology for their buildings and their workplace, which ones are really proven to be not useful. So what we're talking about is what really is going to be disruptive, what's going to stick,
Right, absolutely.
So when it comes to those concierge services, I think there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of options, and it'll be interesting to see what really works in the near term.
Sure.
So. I think the concierge idea from a landlord perspective is really driven by economics. When you're in a landlord market like San Francisco, they're probably not going to do it, right?
But unless it maybe is driven and demanded by the tenant, right?
But tenants have little leverage in a market that's so landlord heavy as it is in San Francisco. That's the point.
Right.
I think that landlords who are progressive and thinking about positioning themselves for the long run will start thinking about this, and I think that's important. But in markets that are a little bit softer on the landlord side, I think that becomes a differentiator and a strategic advantage. They'll probably do that more. But I see the concierge stuff more as the occupier supplied thing rather than landlord supplied, which is to say that my workers, their time is valuable, and to the extent that I can give them back some time,
like a perk,
or
really.
focus their time on high value things, then I will provide some kind of service to help them with that. So I think that's going to start to happen.
Yeah, I think, as I kind of hinted towards earlier, I think the owner should kind of maybe not be the one to provide that concierge service, but just kind of streamline the ability for us to connect with service providers externally in the building. Like, I don't need my landlord to have a dry cleaning service that's delivered to me. I bet there's 10 in development right now, and
you
5
almost
that
don't
exist.
want that,
right?
You know, you almost don't want that. You
exactly.
want the options.
But I want the option of allowing my dry cleaning guy to maybe bring it up to my office to make it easy on me.
Yes.
And that's where the landlord can help kind of grease the wheels and work with companies from a security perspective or access perspective, things like that.
Yeah, and I think, because of security and especially being in New York, where I think technology is going to help that, right? Because maybe they don't have to come all the way up, but maybe we could have a happy medium where we meet in the lobby.
Yeah, totally.
Right? No, totally agree. Well, I want to ask the two of you here, from the owner's perspective, because you're working with them, and they're actually, some of them maybe the early adopters or people who are, for whatever reason, they're using it. Do you see them as going to be the more successful moving forward of the owners? The ones that do adopt this and think about this stuff now?
Yes, I mean, of course, I think so, and I'm being a little selfish because that's kind of what we pitch. But I think, if it's not us, it's anyone, participating here. At some level, you need to adopt or you're going to be left behind. Some of these technologies are phenomenal here. I know I pitched that one company earlier, but I'm amazed because I think how useful it would have been and how it would have been a better alternative than anything else that's available today. So I agree.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You're starting to see landlords differentiate their marketing and the framing of their buildings based on their technology, right? So you have 51 Astor Place, which is the East Village building, the Minskoff building, and their whole marketing campaign, once that building was developed, was around, we have the best technology in Midtown South. And I think their first tenant was IBM Watson. Wow. Right there in Astor Place, which is an amazing place for IBM to be. Even a building we work with called 2 Gateway in Newark, their tagline is technically better. And they're attracting media companies and television companies to base in their building because they're saying, we have incredible connectivity right here in New Jersey. You don't need to go into Manhattan to get it. We're technically better. And there's all sorts of examples of that at Dumbo Heights. There's East End Capital has a building called The Plant right in Times Square area, and they totally repositioned their building around technology. And I think they acquired the building for $95 million, and 2 years later sold it for $165.
Okay, so there's no doubt, right?
Yeah,
there's
value
right,
there.
Right, tons
Absolutely.
of value, and especially, it depends, right? It's having the insight or the foresight to use it and leverage it, but then you have to use it and sell it too.
Yeah, you got to sell it.
Package it.
Yeah, not to plug WiredScore, but that's what we try to help them.
No, plug it all the way. That's why you're here. Absolutely. No, that's great.
Yeah.
So this has been great. Great conversation. Thank you. I want to go away, and we'll start with you, Keith. What's something that you're really excited either is in buildings now from a technology side or what's coming?
Well, I think that technologies that, and I'd mentioned this on the panel earlier, I think that technologies that break down barriers between people, democratize data, aggregate it in a way that makes it useful, cuts down hierarchy, those kinds of things. Those kinds of technologies I think are super valuable. And so I think those are connective communication technologies, things that allow us to stay connected when we're separated physically. I think those things are going to come to the forefront and be successful. And the ones that I've seen really are they're small apps or like internal Twitter things or full-service communication platforms that integrate a lot of things across, voice, data, all that kind of stuff. Those things that keep us connected to each other, I think, will prevail.
Great. John?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like I always say, like everyone that's innovating here, I mean, call it CompStack, Vita Space, Hightower. I mean, these guys are, I mean, they helped forge the way. I mean, that's why I'm here today. Also, because Stephen, what you're doing, and so, I mean, I got to leave it to them for kind of leading the way for our whole industry.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. Arie? What are you excited about, Arie? Tell me something that you're excited about technology in buildings. Besides, we're obviously really excited about WiredScore.
Right. So I think what makes people excited to be in a building, right, is the connectedness, as Keith was saying, to where they live and where they shop, where they hang out, right, and where they work. I think that's why a lot of successful buildings or complexes that I'm seeing, they do a good job of unifying all of those things. So you want to be there and you want to spend time there all day.
That's good.
And I know I mentioned Hudson Yards on the panel. I think that's a great example of one set of buildings coming down the pipeline that's doing that. And they're doing that with technology, you know, with Wi-Fi and cell phone connectivity, and they're doing that with sensors on everything that they can study to understand foot traffic and noise and make sure that people want to spend time there. And it's not just going to work and commuting home and everything else is at home. And I think technology is a big way we can get data to optimize that experience of being in the building.
Right. Very cool. Agreed. Travis?
Yeah, along those lines, I think information is key, and I think that every single one of these disruptors is trying to gather more, better information and more data. And then it's also how you present that data in useful ways so people can visualize ways that they've never been able to before, so they can save money on energy. How is my building using energy and water use? How does that compare to other buildings?
Right, it's going to be very useful.
Yeah, things that are actually hands-on, tangible things that are transformative for a building owner and a manager to be able to monetize their space, cut expenses, and all of these guys are relying on data. So the more data, the more information we can get, the more that we can share. And that's what my business is too, highrisefacilities.com. We're always looking at how our buildings using information, who is leading the pack, how is data driving change, and that's every one of these companies here today is all about gathering more and better data.
Make smarter decisions. So, yeah. Absolutely. I think we can end with that too. So thank you, everybody. This has been part in the disruption, buildings connecting us to technologies connecting us to buildings of the future. Thank you for joining us today, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot,
Stephen.